Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning into the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams. And Daniel, good to see you. I understand you have a bit of an announcement dealing with our program.
Yes, good morning, Dr. Paul, and happy Monday. We got some good news recently. We've just passed our 3 million views on our YouTube show.
Oh, great.
So our subscriber base keeps increasing, and people can subscribe at youtube.com/Ron Paul Liberty Report. So our subscribers are increasing, and we've had over 3 million people watch the show.
Wonderful, wonderful. So we're going to do another show today, and maybe we'll get a few more listeners and viewers in. But of course, the subject we'll deal with is what's been on the airways for the last couple of days. Obviously, a real tragedy that occurred in Orlando, but many, many different interpretations. And sorting all this out is not always that easy, especially early on. We don't have every single fact. We have some facts, and there's some speculation. But we can also see some groups of people lining up to take advantage of the situation to promote their cause. We have this whole thing about, the anti-gay, anti-lesbian. Mm-hmm. They say, well, it was all hate to do that. And then there's this anti-Muslim group. They say, oh yeah, these are the Muslims. We need more bombs, more bombs in the Middle East. And then we also have the anti-gun people, including the president, an opportunity, to go after the gun people. The irony of this whole attack on guns, which everybody suspected, is that more people are buying guns than ever before. It motivates people to understand what's going on. But we have a few other things that we might suggest contribute to that. But those are the things that the people are lining up. Never pass up an opportunity to use a tragedy for somebody's political benefit.
Yeah, as you point out, everyone's lining up to help it push their agenda. Also, there's a benefit. There's something for everyone in an attack like this, and it sounds morbid to say, but it's true. Even the government benefits because they say we need more resources to be able to look into this. People interested in forcing mental health treatment on people will benefit because they'll say if he was mentally ill, then we need to more aggressively pursue medicating people who are suspected of mental illness. So sadly, it is true that so many rush forth to take advantage.
I noticed two announcements, one by Paul Ryan, speaks for a lot of people, and his whole thrust was Islamic terrorism, Islamic terrorism. It never crossed his mind that terrorism is a tactic and is not a precise issue per se. Somebody uses this type of strategy. But his attack was, Islamic terrorism, implying what you just said, is, that'll help me push my agenda through and spend more money on the military-industrial complex. But the president's statement didn't deal with that. It dealt with guns are too easily available, and that we need more gun control. And it's the gun that does it. If they didn't have access to the gun, we wouldn't be seeing these people killed. I guess he sort of forgot about Timothy McVeigh and some others who kill a lot of people without guns when they get desperate or when they go out of their minds.
And of course, this nightclub they were in was a gun-free zone. So having laws and rules against guns doesn't dissuade someone who is determined to use them.
Right. No, and the other thing that Paul Ryan said, this is an example of cowardness. The people are a coward. But that never appealed to me as a reason or an excuse, because it to me makes me think that these people aren't cowards, but they're out of their minds. If there's this case more so than others, somebody asked me, they said, what do you think was the biggest problem here? And I would say about 95% of it, this guy was deranged. Even though he did make mention of Islam, and we know he went to Saudi Arabia on 2 occasions, a good place to study about civil liberties and all, but to plan something like this where he knew he was going to die, he can't be of sound mind. But I think what happens is unsound, their mind is unsound, but then they can go on and grasp hold of a few things. If there's some people out there that use religion to cause violence, as they have in Judaism and Christianity and others, that, oh, well, I'm going, so I might as well do it for a holy cause. But I think this person, from my viewpoint, comes across more deranged and hateful. I mean, you read a story about what his wife has said, and he wasn't exactly a friendly character. And it led to this. It still is a tragedy, but you mentioned it was a gun-free zone. You know, I read, you know, somebody was making that case on the internet, and somebody else typed in, "You pro-gun people, you're just crazy," because can you imagine somebody in that place with all those people, and he has his own pistol and he tries to shoot this guy? What if he missed and killed somebody else? Never once thinking, well, maybe he wouldn't miss anybody and maybe he would have killed him a lot sooner. Yeah. But that's how obsessed they are with this. So you see so much of this trying to move their agenda, whether it's the foreign policy agenda, whether it's the gay agenda or whatever. They will use this as an excuse.
And the issue of the mental illness in the Islam is interesting because apparently, you know, he made pretty flamboyant statements at work. This according to a Wall Street Journal article, claiming that he had friends in Hezbollah and friends in Al-Qaeda. And apparently someone called the FBI, somehow they got wind of it. They went and they talked to him twice. They interviewed him. And when they interviewed him, they quickly came to the conclusion that he basically didn't know what he was talking about. He didn't know anything about these groups, you know, therefore they said he wasn't really a threat. He was certainly not in this way. So that would tend to support your view that the person was insane.
You know, and we have evidence of it, that family members had weird ideas too, and the people he worked with said he was, you know, not quite with it. My curiosity is, I wonder if he was on any drugs. I wonder if he had seen a doctor and got psychotropic drugs or something like that, because that compounds the problem, and that may come out later on. That doesn't fully explain it, but the one thing that we did not read about is the possibility that with this deranged mind and influenced by a couple people with weird ideas about religion, and then they put it together, and all of a sudden he comes up with this whole thing. I just think that that is a very strong possibility that the religion did have some part to do with it, but it would be rather minor compared to these other things.
And you mentioned Paul Ryan, of course, trying to take advantage, and many politicians have done this. See, it's radical Islam. The president won't even use the words radical Islam. You know, this is the big thing. But you know, if people like Paul Ryan were so concerned about radical Islam, why aren't they speaking up about our arming radical Islamic groups in Syria, for example? I think Professor Josh Landis estimated that 60 to 70% of the weapons we give to the moderates there end up in the hands of ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Why aren't they worried about that radical Islam?
Yeah.
You know, it's...
Well, another argument that, that Ryan made was this guy, he had no respect for borders. And I keep thinking, do we have a lot of respect for borders, where we go and what we do? And then when we look at even the European countries and our country, how we create chaos. Actually, they accept some of our philosophic ideas on economics, government-planned economies, which is a disaster in socialism. And then they come in and we go in there and cause chaos. And then what we do is we subsidize the migration. We open up the doors, and they come here, and they get a lot of money to come here. And as a matter of fact, I think this perpetrator here worked for a company that played a role in moving immigrants or migrants and illegal ones around the country. So here we have these migrants coming in, which means they're breaking down borders, because the migration, that's done with executive order. The Congress doesn't say, well, let's bring so many in here. They just have open ideas and let the president decide. And so that is the abuse of borders. To say that this guy, part of his problem was he was born in America and lived here and became nuts here. And yet now, one of the things, it's pure propaganda, you know, about what they're doing.
And, you know, I think we both read the story in Zero Hedge yesterday, which is a really well-done piece, as they often do, that pointed out the irony, and some more conspiracy-minded might even take it further than that, but the company that he worked for, G4S, which is the largest security firm in the world by revenue, this company had been contracted by the federal government to transport illegal aliens. They're called OTM, other than Mexicans, who have crossed the border into the U.S. They were contracted to transport them up further into the country to relieve some of the pressure down in south. So talk about not respecting the borders, and talk about if there is a problem with radical Islam, talk about the government being colluding with this idea of letting in people that have no idea who they are.
Right. And you know, Adam Dick, somebody on our staff, did a little bit of research after he saw these headlines about how massive this was and how many terrorist attack and multiple killings. But he came up with a statistic that sort of refuted a lot of this scare tactic. It's hundreds and hundreds of these attacks are occurring ongoing.
Yeah, the media likes to throw out 980 some attacks a year, you know, which is ridiculous, because what they do is they sort of dumb down the numbers. So each time maybe it's a family shooting where the father or the mother deranged and kills someone, they'll put that all up as a mass shooting. And so by that way, they can also push their agenda, which is often an anti-gun agenda, by making it seem like these things happen every day. Thankfully, they don't.
You know, I get annoyed when anybody sees individuals as part of a group and therefore they belong. Let's say that it's the anti-gay thing that was the motivating. See, that's wrong, because they put everybody into one group, and it should be the initiation of violence, which would be the whole thing. But already these people who are anti-Muslim wants to blame Muslim per se and want to keep all Muslims out. The fallacy in their thinking is they're collectivists in individual liberty. That yes, there is a problem with a certain segment of Muslims, and they have committed acts of violence. But to say that, you know, it's a Muslim problem means they don't have the vaguest idea about what civil liberties are all about. And people gravitate to this. I mean, people say, you're right. I mean, we've had a couple examples of this, so therefore we have to excommunicate and put them out and watch them and not let any more in. And that's exactly what motivated the anti-black, anti-Hispanic, all the prejudice all the way back to anti-Catholic or whatever you want. They put people in groups, and this represents the absence of an understanding or caring about the non-aggression principle. People should be seen as individuals who have inalienable rights to their own life, and they're not a reflection of some group that may have some people in there that did dumb things, and then you get painted with the same brush. I think that is so dangerous. I think that's what's going on here.
The other thing we haven't really discussed is the role of the media in this whole thing. The media is obsessed with printing stories and running stories on TV about the threat from Islam, the threat overseas. And I wonder what effect that has on society, trying to scare people into supporting more military, supporting more U.S. Troops overseas, more bombs overseas. That all has an agenda, but maybe it's contributing to some kind of a mass psychosis on the part of Americans.
Well, they tend to contribute a lot of harm, whether it's setting the stage for war and invasion of countries, and you know, the military-industrial complex. They have tremendous influence there. So I think that very well could be. But, you know, going back, we mentioned this whole idea about, you know, blowback. I think blowback is related. I don't think that's the number one cause here, because my number one assessment at this current time is that the guy was not, but he was influenced by things, you know, the religious things. But I think this whole idea of building up anger. They say he was a very angry person. So it would be easy, since his dad was from Afghanistan and we bombed there a lot and killed some people. Of course, they had a violent system over there. But I think that this whole blowback phenomenon is real, whether it's the major thing or not. Or whether it's just a contributing factor. But we never discuss that. That's the last thing they want, because that would hurt the military-industrial complex. But if the blowback phenomenon is a major part of our problem that we're facing, we would have to admit to something which is not going to happen, that the 25 years that we have just spent since we first went into the Persian Gulf War, I mean, think of how many bombs. I'll bet it's a lot more than we dropped in, matter of fact, I think it was just in Iraq, we probably dropped more than we did in World War II. I mean, just think of all that going on, and to say that, oh, well, we sort of made a mistake and we might have been contributing to this. You know, everybody wants to talk about the radical Islamic terrorists, and that elicits this fear. But if you're over in those countries and you're on the receiving end of occupation and a lot of innocent people getting killed with drones and bombs and all going on, it's not hard for them to talk and visualize radical Christian crusaders. And you know, even George Bush used the word crusader. Oh, let's go in now because we got to go get them. We have a crusade to perform. And who wants to be put in the category that we as Christians are part of the aggressiveness of our government? But they have a reason for thinking that, for history, and also certain groups in this country who are well known to be Christians, but they have a different perception on what the initiation of force should be about, and that they're religious, for religious reasons as well as practical reasons, they feel obligated and patriotic obligated to support preemptive war. Yeah. And so somebody over there, that could help twist these minds. And you only need one twisted mind out of 10 million to have an impact, and they know that. So that is something that I don't see how it's going to change because there's so much violence going on against us to back off, because the American people won't accept that, because right now, this is an excuse to accelerate bombing. I mean, it's inconceivable, you know, that this would be the answer to it. And because the other thing is the reason it's not going to stop. It's so sterile now. It isn't like we have to invade with tanks and take over bombers. We just use drones. You know, and we can do a lot more bombing and killing to teach them a lesson. Yeah, here's a guy from the United States, born and raised here, goes nuts, and bombing somebody in the Middle East is in retaliation to this. Where does this come from? Explain that to me.
I think there is a kind of psychosis produced by this sense of American exceptionalism. And I think when people buy into the idea of American exceptionalism, they become incapable of self-reflection. So I think you made a great point earlier. What if the last 25 years was just a great big mistake? It'd be difficult for people to face that.
That's for darn sure. They're not likely to do that, but we will do our best to try to look at these issues as objectively as we can. And of course, I start with the premise, as libertarians are supposed to, with the non-aggression principle, that you're not supposed to initiate force or violence, and governments aren't supposed to do that either. The problem becomes when we're in the mixture, when the retaliation against what we have been doing is difficult to say, well, we need to stop it. What are you going to do? Just let them keep bombing us and killing us? Well, there's a stretch there. That's where the propaganda comes in, where they say there's a lot more happening than it really is. But I think the approach to believing in a strong national defense, believing that American goodness does not incorporate the spread of American values through guns and bombs and invasions and occupations, that has to go. If not, we are not going to be much of a nation, because we're working very hard to destroy the bit of greatness that we still have and the principles of believing in individual liberty. Unfortunately, an event like this seems to stir the pot about in a negative manner, and we have to do our very best to emphasize the positive nature of what America is all about and what individual liberty is all about and what our response should be under these circumstances. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.